With the season now in its final moments, it is a good time for clubs all around Europe to look back at the campaign and start to take stock. What went wrong? What destroyed the season? What could have been done differently? What decision turned out to be the difference between a historic and a mediocre season? Well, we're here to help with that in this video today. These are 7 big mistakes that ruined your favourite club this season.
Football's more than a game. It's passion, pride, glory. This World Cup season, Goal90 brings you our biggest offer yet. Buy 3 jerseys and get 1 free. That's 4 jerseys for the price of 3. And yes, free worldwide shipping. This is a limited time World Cup special only until April the 30th. So move fast. Pick your jerseys. Wear your passion. Own the moment before they're gone. Visit Goal90 shop. Link in the description.
We'll start with Real Madrid. We think that the big mistake that cost them the most was hiring Xabi Alonso to replace Carlo Ancelotti last summer. That one decision feels like it set the project years back. To be fair to them, at the time, it seemed like the right decision. We all saw Alonso work miracles at Bayer Leverkusen, and being a former Real Madrid man himself, he knew the club, so it made sense. But it turned out to be a mistake. The egos at Real Madrid need a strong personality to be in charge, and Alonso just was never strong enough. He failed to manage the egos from the very beginning with his treatment of Rodrigo, Endrick, but especially Vini. That just rocked the season and set the team on the path of failure because they actually weren't bad at the start of the season. When Alonso left halfway into the season, the damage had already been done. The club could not go out and hire a top coach at that point, so they had to make do with Arbeloa, who is another weak personality that could not manage the egos. Before they could blink, they had already missed out on 2 trophies and were now on the fast lane to a trophyless season. And sadly, all that has descended to complete chaos with the infighting and division in the dressing room. With a different managerial hire at the beginning of the season, Real Madrid could have been in a better place right now. Perhaps they'd have even won a trophy or 2. But while Madrid's mistake was hiring the wrong man, Chelsea's error was sacking the right man. Enzo Maresca was actually doing really well at Chelsea. In just 1 year, he was able to secure a top 4 Premier League finish, and he won 2 trophies including the FIFA Club World Cup, where he produced a big performance against PSG in the final. They started the season pretty well, and even though they were shaky at some points, it was still quite obvious that the club was on the right path. The players were ready to give their lives for Maresca, the fans were on his side, and he had built a team that was fearless in big games. All he needed was some backing from the owners to take the team to the next level, but they couldn't give him that. Instead, they thought it best to sack him and replace him with a very inexperienced manager, and that just completely ruined Chelsea's season. From eyeing Champions League qualification, Chelsea are now close to finishing in the bottom half of the table. They were embarrassed by PSG in the Champions League, have not won a Premier League game since March, and they had a run of 5 games where they were unable to score a single Premier League goal. It was all so terrible, and it could all have been avoided if they just had given Maresca what he wanted instead of sacking him. Everyone and their dog know that Chelsea would, at the very least, have been in the top 5 in the Premier League right now if Maresca was still in charge. And I mean, he had outcoached Enrique in a major final before, who says he could not have done it again in the Champions League this season. Elsewhere in London, Tottenham's big mistake was sacking Ange Postecoglou. Sure, you could argue that Spurs had a bad league campaign last season as well, but Ange was a strong personality and he was still able to get the best from that injury-ridden team. Usually, coming out of challenges like that with success creates an unbreakable bond in the dressing room. The boys suffered with Ange, and the season ended them ending their trophy drought. That experience would have created a very strong bond between the players and the coach, and the boys would likely have been ready to go to war for the gaffer. The club just needed to give him another shot, give him the signings he needs and see how he does. Sacking him was just the wrong call. It meant that they had to start from ground zero all over again, and it surely didn't help that he was replaced by Thomas Frank. That sacking would only have been justified if he was replaced by a top coach with experience winning big trophies. And it's interesting because while we believe that Spurs should not have sacked Ange, for Man United, we think that the big mistake they made was not sacking Ruben Amorim earlier. The Portuguese coach should never ever have even come into the new season as United coach. He had a terrible league finish, and unlike Ange, he didn't have any trophy to help salvage the season. For a club as big as Man United, that should be a capital offence, considering he was backed by the club and was given the free hand to create a unique team to fit his very unique setup. that failure should have got him sacked immediately, but it didn't. He wasn't even able to string 5 wings together, and they had other opportunities to let him go this season, particularly after he was knocked out of the EFL Cup by 3rd Division Grimsby, but they still kept him, only finally letting him go in January. That was just a really long and unnecessary wait. And from what we have seen from Michael Carrick so far, it feels so much like if United had sacked Amorim much earlier, the club could maybe have even been in the title race this season. And when you think about it, this was such a big missed opportunity because United didn't qualify for Europe, so their players were able to afford more rest than their counterparts, and that could really have helped them in a title race. Hopefully, United don't make another version of this same mistake by failing to hire Carrick permanently at the end of this season. But hey, this entire video is not just about managerial decisions, you know. For example, in AC Milan's case, it appears that their biggest mistake was letting go of their best players without adequate reinforcements. Last summer, they lost Tijani Reinders, Malik Thiaw, Theo Hernandez, Noah Okafor and Pierre Kalulu, among others. And how did they replace these players? By bringing in aging guys like Modric, Rabiot and Füllkrug. And then, when they decided to actually spend some money, they went and spent it on Christopher Nkunku. The recruitment was just very questionable, and it is no surprise that they have ended another season trophyless. And just like United, this was a missed opportunity for Milan as well. Having failed to qualify for Europe, they had more rest than their counterparts, and that should have helped them mount a proper title charge. Instead, their place in the top 4 is still at risk. A few smarter decisions in the transfer window, and they could have been in a very different place right now. What about Liverpool? Obviously, a lot of mistakes were made to land them at this point, but one of the biggest ones has to be selling Luis Diaz without bringing in a proper replacement. Diaz was a workhorse who led the press, carried the ball, created chances, and was also involved in the goals. Losing him was always going to affect the team seriously. At the very least, they should have replaced him with a similar profile. Instead, they spent nearly €400 million on signing 2 strikers and an attacking midfielder. It was just a very unwise use of money, and unfortunately for them, the timing of this big mistake coincided with a monumental drop in form for Mo Salah and a psychological blow from the loss of Jota, and that just sent everything crashing down for them. It was just impossible for them to recover. As for Barcelona, it might sound harsh, but their mistake was not making a big sale before the season started. Their financial trouble is the reason they were not able to sign players and strengthen the squad coming into this season, but a big sale would have given them the leeway to do that. With better defenders, a more lethal finisher up front, and just better depth in general, Barcelona may have gone further in the Champions League and maybe even completed a quadruple. Of course, their season didn't end badly. They finished with La Liga and the Spanish Supercopa, but seeing their chances at the Champions League and Copa del Rey get cut short by an average Atleti team must have really stung. After what we saw in Hansi Flick's first season, it was clear that all he needed was some reinforcements, and they could actually go and conquer the world, but they just could not afford to bring in big names. In that case, they should really have made a big sale to finance the purchases they required. Perhaps 1 or 2 of Jules Koundé, Dani Olmo, Ronald Araujo, Marc Casado, Robert Lewandowski and Andreas Christensen should have been sold, and that could have helped them make the signings they needed to take them far in the Champions League. They'll be very wise to not make the same mistake again this summer. Finally, Arsenal made one very big mistake at the beginning of the season. Just like with Barcelona, they surely have not had a bad season. In fact, this still has the potential to be the greatest season in the club's entire history, so saying this mistake ruined their season is a bit of an exaggeration, but the fact is that this season could have been even better if they had not signed Kepa Arrizabalaga. Now, we're not trying to pile on him or anything, but without him, Arsenal may actually still have a chance of a quadruple this season. He pretty much gifted City the opening goal in the League Cup final and didn't exactly cover himself in glory in the FA Cup game against Southampton. Some people blame Arteta for playing his second goalkeeper in the final, but it's what everyone does. I mean, Pep did it in that same final, and he had no issues simply because he had a better backup goalkeeper. Perhaps Arsenal just need to stop signing players from Chelsea. That would be a very good rule of thumb for them when it comes to transfers. Anyway, it is now time to hear from you guys. What mistake do you think ruined your club's 2025-26 season? Get in the comments and talk to us. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also, turn on the bell notification so you never miss out on new content. Catch you in the next one. Bye.